So what was humankind or humanity's oldest form of government? If you start looking at the history books, they'll talk about the Chinese and the people of India and South America, Incas and all that kind of stuff. But if you really want to go back to where things started, you got to go back to the Fertile Crescent in the Mesopotamian Valley. You know, that's where we get the Epic of Gilgamesh from Babylon. It's also where we get the Adam and Eve story. It's where we get the Noah's Ark story, and you know, a lot of that biblical stuff and historical archaeology stuff. So the original government of humanity that at least we have any record of is Babylon. So what sort of government was that? Well, Gilgamesh was the emperor, if you will. He considered himself 1/3 God. Some records say maybe 2/3 God. So he was the sole ruler. So what kind of a socialist system or representative or republic was it? Well, it was pure and simple socialism.
That was easy.
Yeah, that was pretty easy. But the only way you're really going to understand socialism, or why monarchies and emperors and even ruled by a senate like in Rome was a socialistic society, you have to understand what the hell is socialism, because it wasn't exactly invented by Karl Marx in the 19th century, you know, and Friedrich Engels. The concept of how socialism works is far older than that. So we're going to go through a few steps of what I call the 7 pillars of socialism. The first pillar, if you will, is called an all-powerful ruler. Now, the all-powerful ruler could be a king, a queen, it might be a senate, it might be an emperor, it might be, you know, just a, stupid bureaucracy. It could be any of those things, but it's all powerful. The people have no choice, they have no voice, there's nothing in it. So the next one is to make sure that nobody challenges the all-powerful ruler. You have to divide the society into caste or classes. Nobility, working people, the poor, the white, the black, the green, the red, the blue, whatever. You have to keep them divided so there's no unity among the people to challenge you. So then what happens? Well, all things are considered common. In other words, the divided castes don't have any property rights. They don't have any ownership. They don't even own their own clothes, body, property, houses, fields, nothing. And the way you do that is that everything is owned by the king, or everything is owned by the government, and everything is owned by the barons, the monarchs, the nobility, and nobody has a voice in this at all. So what if people actually had something? In some government systems, people have property, they have things of their own, their own kids, their own wife, their own house, their own fields. Well, you can't get away with that because under a socialistic society, everything has to be regulated, right down to what you can and can't buy, what you can and can't do, whether or not you're allowed to open up a business, or if you do open up a business, we're going to regulate it so heavily that you'll probably never be successful. That's part of the concept. And then what if you decide not to cooperate? Well, governments have a solution to that too. It's called extortion, bribery. They threaten your life, they threaten your livelihood, they threaten your cake business. Jesus, that's how it's done. So, why do people put up with it? The next pillar of socialism. All information is controlled. Censorship, they call it. But no, it's more like controlled. We don't tell you the whole story. We don't let you know what's really going on. We're not going to let you know how vile and corrupt some of your leadership is, because that's their personal life and has nothing to do with reality. Yeah, right. So people go on being pedophiles and crooks and bribery people, and it just goes on and on and on. But you're not allowed to know that. So how come all of this crap happens? Well, it's simple. All your rights are given to you by the government. You are allowed only what the government allows you. So, can you own pitchforks? Well, maybe only with short prongs. Can you own this? Can you own that? That's all controlled. You don't have any rights. Can you speak up? No. Can you have an opinion? No. Not if it contradicts the government. So what happens? How is it we get from that kind of a socialistic system, which all governments from Babylon forward have been, to something more reasonable? Well, there was something that shattered the entire concept of the socialistic kinds of governments and societies. Yep, one idea came along that just shattered it. It was called the Magna Carta. For the first time, a king was forced to admit that some of his nobles and some of his barons actually had rights. And that was done in the 13th century. It took about 4 centuries for England to adopt the Magna Carta and the principles of it into English common law. And then you had philosophers in the 18th century that came along and started envisioning all kinds of different forms of governments. And wouldn't you know it, America was founded shortly after these philosophers expressed their views in the 18th century. Because the one thing that stands up against a socialistic government is human rights. And in the Declaration of Independence, the founders said that people have rights that come from God, divinity, or the fact that they are born human. It's called inalienable rights. You can't take them away. And they began to enumerate how the king had violated their human rights. And when we got around to writing a constitution, it was essentially an anti-theft document to keep the government from taking your human rights. And then we wrote the Bill of Rights, because at that time that's what they considered rights that should not and could not be taken away. Been a lot of discussion about some of those rights as to how unalienable they are. The Second Amendment, people argue that, well, God gave us the right to guns, and says, well, then why didn't Adam and Eve have guns? No, we have the right to self-defense. How you do it is up for debate. In an apartment complex, I'd say baseballs and a baseball bat aren't half bad. Lock your doors, lock your windows. That's defense. In a more urban setting or suburban or even rural, some people consider owning guns, but the truth is about 99% of all the gun owners, it's a hobby. You know, they have the right to own them. They get a thrill out of the big bang and the jolt, you know, when you shoot the thing. So these are all rights that are considered in America inalienable. You can't take them away. But the one thing that stands between socialism and a more liberty-oriented government is human rights. The Declaration of Human Rights, and government can't take them away. That's the fundamental idea. And what the founders came up with was an idea to divide the power among 3 different branches, to dilute the power of each. And then they decided that the government should be representative of the people. The people can have the last word on the government. So how do you turn a free, liberty-loving government into a socialistic government? Bureaucracy. Because these people are unelected, they answer to the president, and all you got to do is build a big enough bureaucracy with enough rules and regulations that are not answerable to the people, and you've got socialism all over again. And those people that keep promoting big government, and government is the answer to everything, are nothing more or less than Marxists, progressives, socialists. Take your choice. It's liberty or slavery. Live free, my friends.